Whether I'm talking about systemic racism or women being capable leaders or trans folks, conservatives keep using the non-representative case to say that it represents the full distribution of data points. And I once again feel the need to stress that this is not how we do statistics. I'll give 3 examples of issues I've talked about and conservative responses to them. The first is in a video where I talked about systemic racism and how organizations like Turning Point and Blexit and people like Charlie Kirk want you to think that there is no systemic racism problem. There's a victim mentality problem. And I said, we need to focus on the systemic racism. And when you fix the system to not be racist, the victim mentality goes away, because then the victim mentality won't be based in any reality. And conservatives come in the comments and say, no, the victim mentality is real. What about the mother who tells her son not to work because it would affect her Section 8 qualification? And I posted a video talking about women-led companies being more successful and women-led countries having a higher quality of life. And inevitably, the conservatives come in and say, well, what about this country where a woman took over and collapsed the economy? Or this company where a woman took over and made the company go bankrupt? And I talked about trans people and how they overwhelmingly are successful with their gender-affirming care, physical treatments, and with their social transition, and how they are completely valid based on the definitions of words and based on decades of scientific consensus. Conservatives come in the comments and say, well, what about these cases where people get those surgeries and they regret them and they can't undo them because they're permanent? Don't you care? And all of these cases are things that do happen, but they do not represent the full distribution of data points, nor does the bad that happens because of those things outweigh the good. When it comes to Section 8 and systemic racism, this is the classic conservative policy of, because some people may get aid who don't need it, we shouldn't help anyone. When you go left of conservative, it's we should provide aid because someone may need it, even if some of the people getting it don't. And so when you emphasize this case of the person who's taking advantage of Section 8 by telling their son in this completely made up scenario not to work because it would affect their Section 8 qualification. What you're doing is you're using maybe one of the hundreds or thousands who are taking advantage of it to represent all of what Section 8 does. And you're not looking at the fact that almost 2.5 million people, because of Section 8, can now afford a home. I don't really care if a small minority of people are taking advantage of it. That is not a reason to take it away from the overwhelming majority of people that it actually helps. In women-led companies and countries, on average over the last decade, of S&P 500 companies, the ones that had female CEOs raised their stock price by around 380%, and the ones with male CEOs raised their stock price by about 260%. So the female-led companies are performing better. You can find examples of where a woman took over and crashed a company or a country, but that is not representative of the full distribution of data points. Now, if you want to have a conversation around why women perform better, because women have to outperform men to get the same jobs because of the patriarchy, that's an interesting conversation. That is an example of actual bias. Do I think it undermines what I'm saying? No, because conservatives are telling you that women can't lead. And I'm telling you that they are just as capable, if not better, as men. And for the trans folks, whether you look at social transitions or actual physical procedures, right? Social transitions meaning like trans folks coming out as being trans. Trans folks are not regretting either of those things. The over 90% of people who socially transition do not regret their social transition, and the majority of those that do only regret it because of societal pressures from friends and family. When you look at physical procedures related to gender-affirming care, trans folks regret those at a rate less than 1%, while the average of all medical procedures has a regret rate of 14%. In other words, you are 14 times as likely to regret a medical procedure or a surgery if you drew a random medical procedure out of a hat than you are to regret physical procedures related to gender-affirming care. These things do happen. I'm not saying they don't, but what I am saying is ask yourself if these bad things that happen are representative of the full set of data points. And in all of those examples, and most of the ones I hear people spout from Fox News, right, they don't.